Good morning, everybody, and welcome to what I think will be a really interesting panel discussion today. We're talking, as you saw earlier from the introduction, how dealerships must change for the new era of mobility. It follows on to our discussion yesterday, for those of you who joined us, where we talked about the environment, the internal and external factors that are driving these changes at the OEM level and how it affects both the lenders and the upfitters. And so we're looking at the entire system as the decisions are made and as reality occurs in front of us. But now this session is, what do we do at the retail level? What do we do in the dealerships? How do we treat the customers? How do we operate? You know, we're running two businesses here. We're running the business for the current customer base, depending on where you are, a degree of effort in developing the new era mobility related business model. And so that's really this sort of a continuation. I think it'll be quite interesting. We got some great experts with us. This is also, the idea of this is to provide sort of a town hall meeting area where everybody can come together and try to understand what is going to happen and what I should do in my business strategically. Nobody knows. So the best thing you can do is gather enough information and get enough insight so you can make decisions on future trends that are timely and maybe ahead of your competition and allow you to move to where you want to be at the right time. And that's the concept that Catherine has had in the Commercial Vehicle Business Summit. My hat's off to her for starting this and really becoming sort of the beginning of a developing commercial business information source for everybody. It's maybe like continuing education in some ways. So we've got three great panelists today. They've been here before. We have the opportunity to talk to them over time, and it's been, I think it'll be enlightening to see what's changed since our conversation last year. Mark Williams at Rick Hendrick City Chevrolet. Mark is he's in charge of fleet and commercial director for Rick Hendrick. And Rick Hendrick it's got about 93 dealerships now, I think, about 10,000 employees, a huge employer and a huge part of especially GM, but they have all franchises. But he's been one of the early commercial and fleet oriented businesses. And I think that, Mark is driving that for him. Mark's been doing this for, I think over 13 or 14 years. He's just been a director, which means that he's understands the business better than most. And we're pleased to have Mark here. He's got a little bit of a sore throat, but I hope that he will be able to take a drink of water and keep talking. Dan Bryan is Ricart to Business. Ricart has a group of dealerships in Ohio, sort of the southeastern part of Ohio, out of Columbus. And they've been a very, very progressive store. My first experience was in the I don't want to tell you, but it started with an 8, when I was a regional manager in Cincinnati. And one of our jobs at Toyota was to begin a full-size truck. And so I had the pleasure and the honor of going to Ricart, which was the largest Ford dealer, to try to understand the Ford business at the retail level. I met them at that time, and they've been very progressive ever since. And I love the commitments that they've made. I was there also about a month ago to tour the facilities and to meet with everybody. They put 113,000 square foot building up to support commercial operations, 64,000 square feet of service for commercial. They're a mobility provider. They're not just a service provider. And I think they cover about 70% of the Ford market there in Southeast Ohio. So it's a huge operation that Dan has built, and look forward to hearing from him. And then we've got Ryan Pritchard. The Pritchard companies, as you know, they've been around since 1913. Ryan, I think, is fifth generation. And what that shows is it's a company that adapts and changes to everything that's occurred. I mean, they were there when they were still selling horses, when we were just coming out of the horse era, and transitioned to internal combustion. And now Ryan is heading up the efforts. He's the chief revenue officer, which means he's the guy that brings in all of the money, but he's also working on EV and developing Pritchard EV, which is really going to be a multimodal EV distribution and charging system. And so we've got sort of a much more involved in EV committed group, but Pritchard is one of the best fleet service companies in the country, and they have been for a long time. So we've got a great panel. I'm really interested to begin discussing this with them. One of the things that I had written an editorial that just was published not too long ago, and one of the questions that I answered is, what is the greatest single threat to the dealership model that we have today? And my answer was, we've met the enemy and he is us. That great quote from Pogo. The customers know what they want. The OEMs are doing a lot of investing in new technology. Yeah, we just saw Ford's big bet on autonomous vehicles sort of go by the wayside. You're going to have some winners, you're going to have losers, but they're all getting involved in this new era. And so the biggest threat we have is trying to put our head in the sand and act like nothing's happening, and try to keep it the way it was. The people that are still selling buggy whips. So I'd like to maybe start with Dan, with you, and ask you, how do you see these factors affecting the market in your market? I mean, what do you see? You know what you're getting ready for, and you know what Ford wants and what customers want. But physically, what's happening with customers? Are they coming in? Are they asking for products? Are they happy with what they have? In today's environment, where are we with regard to the acceptance of different alternative electrified powertrains or different models of ownership?
So first off, I wanted to say thank you to Catherine and everybody at Work Truck Solutions for putting this on. I know yesterday there was a lot of good content in the panels, and I took a lot away personally just from listening to everyone, and really started my gears going, thinking about things that were already not, I guess, brought up, or that I had already thought about. So I really appreciate that, first off. I think to the first question, the question you asked about, what are people asking for? I think people understand, Lord knows, I mean, there's enough media about whether it's pricing, whether it's availability, as more and more electric vehicles are discussed. I think that there's not so far there's not been a giant demand. I appreciate Ryan's insight, from a global standpoint, and looking at what all is out there. And I think probably the biggest thing for me, and the message from our staff, is to make sure that we're eyes and ears wide open to what's out there. Because realizing that, this isn't going to happen overnight, but we also realize that it is coming to some extent, whether it's, light duty, medium duty, passenger car, whatever that may be. But I think just being aware of what's out there, paying attention to what is, what's coming. Because the last thing that I want to have to do is for our business model, as we've already had to pivot and go a different direction, is that it's going to have to pivot again, and we're not ready for it. So I think the big thing for me is the development of our people. I've talked about that before, because you think about the factors that we can and can't control. We just had an offsite meeting last week just talking about that specifically. And you think about, just from the dealership operation standpoint, one of our biggest expenses is our people. They're also one of our greatest assets. So I think the development of our people to adopt and change, we were talking prior to starting here today, the commercial business has been very much the same for a long time. And over the last 2 years, how it's changed is getting everyone's mindset right, to be able to, pivot again, because it may very well have to in the next 6 months. So to me, it's, again, developing your people, eyes wide open, and just being able to pivot, when necessary.
Thank you. Mark, how about from your standpoint, your customers, are they asking for, are they buying? And what's their experience with electrification?
Excuse me, Jim. Anyhow, good morning to everybody. Our accounts, the demand, if you will, in the marketplace is not ceasing. Number one, okay. There's a couple things that we're currently, as I see, watching, learning, if you will, embracing, if you will, moving forward. Okay, we're currently juggling, if you will, in my viewpoint. We're juggling the present and we're adapting, preparing, and planning for the future as well. And it's critical. As Dan references, our people are the key ingredient because they are part of your team, your workforce, your investment, to prepare them. And it's definitively, I mean, we are juggling right now. And the good thing is, obviously, the demand is not subsiding. At least we do not see it on our end of it, mainly because we're trying to sustain and catch up from prior 2 years, 3 years of which we have not been able to supplement adequately.
Pent up demand, maybe.
And I mean, it's a good thing as far as just what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with new territories. EV definitively is being emphasized and pushed by all the manufacturers out there. So we've got to embrace it ourselves as well. It's evolving, it's changing. It will change continuously at this point right now. And I would love to see and more embracing of it. The customers are not totally, in my viewpoint, coming full strength at this point, but it's evolving daily as we speak right now. And I think without question, that segment of the market, has certainly a lot of room to grow, because there are people, buyers, accounts that are probably very good candidates, if you will, realizing that it can fit into the mode of how they want to utilize it and fit it into their business model, if you will. So yeah, but a lot of opportunity, definitely. But we're going to continue to see change. We've all just got to deal with the present, take care of the present, take care of your employees, take care of your accounts, help them through this. The key is obviously, I was on a WebEx earlier this morning and just continuing to talk about it, is just sharing with your accounts, showing them, listening to them. Those are the key ingredients right now, Jim.
Probably a lot of curiosity and information as opposed to.
Without question. Yeah, absolutely.
Ryan, from your perspective, we know it's coming. We know we're preparing. We're spending. Everyone's spending. The OEMs. Everybody's spending a lot of money. You are. How do you see the infiltration of EVs, and both geographically or by market and timing wise, from your perspective, because you're seeing those that are adapting to it?
100%. And so when you look at kind of that heat sheet, a lot of people are following kind of the California memo of understanding with that zero emissions. You saw the announcement in California and New York. I think there's 16 plus other states that are aligned with that. So those are really going to be kind of our leading indicators of what are the challenges we're going to face in adoption. And you take a guy, for example, like Mark, This guy only does deals with commas. He's a volume guy, fleet guy. He's crushed it. And now all of a sudden, these accounts that he's used to doing 1,000 annually, 10,000 annually, knowing Mark, like those big accounts now, they drop those vehicles off. They have to have access to power, and the utility needs to be involved. And then the charging company needs to be involved. Then permits need to be involved. And it's a highly involved process. And so when you take a step back, really what we're doing here and what I love about this, it's about collaboration. It's about standardizing and benchmarking that process. So early adopters like Dan aren't punished when they take that leap of faith and something shifts, So it's constantly being on that edge, that leading edge without falling off, And so I think these types of events, and again, big shout out to Catherine Schifferly as we look towards the future and how we modernize. I'm just telling you, leading the way with this digital transformation in commercial vehicles, that's really kind of how we see this evolve.
Yeah, it's more than EVs. You're right. It's really mobility, and it's doing it the way the customers want. And it's interesting because the different types of ownership structure, sharing assets, subscription models, the initial cost of EVs is much higher, and the reduced maintenance allows some break even, maybe 5 years, 6 years down the road. But I think it's going to spawn different ways for customers to do business, and incentives will be provided that way too. So Dan, one of my thoughts is that this transformation is affecting the commercial operators as providers of mobility already. So in some ways, you all are the pattern, or they have established the model that will eventually reflect the entire dealership, retail customers, because you deal with relationships, not transactions. And that as you look forward with mobility, with EVs, with different ownership structure, with the service becoming a driving force of loyalty, that is going to become the norm for retail customers, versus only being part of commercial. So from your standpoint, Dan, it seems to me you're already doing that, and Ryan said the same thing. How do you see the providing fleet management and mobility that you're doing today? How do you see that expanding and changing? And what advice do you have for other dealers to follow suit that what you've done, or how you see it?
So the first thing that comes to mind with all of it is, we look at throughput. And, that asset as it sits around here waiting on a part, waiting on a technician to get the vehicle fixed. And so very similarly, you've got the retail customer that they still need their vehicle to run to soccer practice or do whatever. The commercial side, and I've heard this stat, and I've confirmed this stat with many customers, that it is, as long as that vehicle's sitting somewhere, whether it's here or whatever it may be, and it's not working for them, it's costing them $2,000 to $3,000 a day. Mm-hmm. And so we're focused on trying to be proactive for that customer, proactive and being a better partner. Mark's talked about relationships, and you brought up relationships again just now. But I think the relationships, and I think about the people that are taking care of our community. How can, if I see that guy, at the local grocery store, the local gas station, how can I make sure that I'm fostering that relationship nonstop, so that the service that we provide is second to none? Because what I want to make sure that, our staff is focused on is that vehicle in and out. Because I think as we've all been challenged with inventory, I think that some of the options, you talked about ride sharing, whether it's a bucket truck or it's a crane truck, you name whatever, dump truck, you name it. And of those vehicles, I could see, trying to take that same vehicle and have multiple applications for it, because, staffing, everyone has staffing problems. And so thinking about efficiencies in every aspect of their business, I think, is going to be critical. And I think those things, the better we are at efficiencies, making throughput faster in the shop, and not letting, whether it's a parts challenge or whatever it may be, we just have to be better partners in looking at those things, because a lot of times it feels like they don't know what they don't know with some of these customers. And so we have to also do a better job of communicating with them, educating them. And that's where I go back, and I've already said it once, the development of our people. So they're seeing and understanding, and they're a part of the solution as well. And again, making sure that we are a really, really good partner, that they don't want to do business anywhere else, because we know we have their best interest in mind.
Mm-hmm. So in that regard, you invested in a facility 3 years ago?
Yep.
And so it's 64,000 square feet of service?
Yep.
And then how many square feet of parts?
35,000.
35,000. So I wonder, I mean, that was a big investment 3 years ago. It's fully utilized. You probably need more room now?
And then some, yes.
Yeah. So you can't build it big enough, can you?
Correct.
If you take care of the customers, like you're saying, and the more you do that, the more business you have. If you have the majority of the business in your market, I mean, that the next thing for you to do is to take that model to another market.
Yeah, and I think the amazing thing is that, so we moved into the building in March of 20, which obviously everyone knows, COVID was, just kind of starting. And I think about the marketing dollars that we've not spent, and yet we're growing month after month, year over year already. And I don't see it stopping, because we're so focused on trying to make sure that relationship is right with the customer. And they understand that, we have solutions for them that, and I heard someone say this, that we want to make sure we have all the solutions, so they have no reason to push us away from the table. It doesn't matter who it is. And so whether it's the adoption of EV, whether it's a fleet management, whether it's telematics, whether it's a tag and title service, we have to be eyes wide open and ears wide open as well, to where we're looking at every option to try to help them be more efficient with their business.
Mm-hmm. So you're part of their business. You actually move upstream as a partner with their business.
Yes, 100%. And I think about and I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, the aging fleet manager. And I think about the new fleet manager. And, I think it was brought up yesterday. I mean, there's we're data driven anymore. And thinking about this new fleet manager that's data driven, and the more, information that we can help them understand about their own business, the better decisions they can make. And that's where I say we're a much better partner with them.
Yeah. And that's really where Work Truck Solutions, it sets up a point, but Work Truck Solutions is providing that software connection as well as a marketplace to grow your customer base into this new era. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that for the success of Work Trucks, the way it's been growing 20+% a year.
Agreed.
Mark, from your perspective, you guys have a lot of dealerships. How will you handle the facility needs similar to what we see that Dan has done at Ricart? Because you're in 90 locations,
and we do, and I mean, and there is a complete separate division that is totally responsible for expansions and new development within the Hendrick Corporation itself, and that obviously is it's expanding rapidly as I speak. Not just here internally, we're undergoing some massive renovations as we speak right now with service and the entrance, if you will, and how people are approached relative to just redesigning completely. Our parts, we have a huge wholesale operation here. We're currently in the process of reviewing that relative to expansion to let it grow even more. We're almost a little stifled at this point right now as far as just to not allowing ourselves to grow. One of the interesting things, and just listening to Dan in growth, our businesses, our accounts that we deal with, and this has always been my forethought as far as just in individuals, they are not really separate. I try to tie them together. The reality of it is every single person that we deal with, there's only two options out there that they fall under. They either work for someone, a company, a business, or they own a business. Those two scenarios. So, and again, we've always tried to tie relationships very closely together, finding out when we do have someone, if it's an individual that comes in and acquires a vehicle from us, who are they associated with? Do they own a business? Do they work for somebody here? Have they just recently started working for an account? It's part of how we're going to tie and relate and meld everything together, and help everybody through all of this in working together and with everybody that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
That's the key. And then also choosing how you either change the way people have done business their whole career or changing the people. You have to at some point evaluate the different characteristics and experiences that some people are going to have as they enter this. Ryan, you talked about the digitization and the way customers want to do business and also to be efficient. How have you seen success with a digital platform, and has it been able to be more efficient because of making people better or doing more with fewer people?
Well, it's kind of a blend. So I go back to your comment when you mentioned you change your processes that people have done over the years. You change the people, and to really address that is the people are actually changing. So we sit kind of at this inflection point where you look at the next generation of buyers, the next generation of fleet operators, and they touched on the data-driven side of that. But we're used to this headless e-commerce environment where we can go on Amazon, click on what we want. We can go on Domino's, click on a pizza. We can track it transparently throughout the process. And there's no reason that shouldn't apply just to dealerships, but the entire supply chain and automotive. So really, it's the notion behind that is building the efficiency with those individuals and showing them the value, and taking a process that would take 8 touch points: call, fax, email, quote, approval, submit, out, engineering, check the box. Now we can streamline that with one click of a button. And once people see the value in what we're doing, I think that's when the adoption is really going to accelerate. And then that's going to lead from that digital transformation of our business practices to that digital transformation in your data aggregation, which should also accelerate that transition to a cleaner, more sustainable use case in mobility.
And in doing that too, you're collecting data on your customers that's valuable to them. They probably don't know what you know about their needs and when they're going to need service and replacing the fleets and what the value of their fleet is. And so that you have also data information that can be valuable for them to make their own decisions.
Yeah, correct. And being vertically integrated across that ecosystem really helps make more data-driven decisions. And it really helps us prepare and be able to react in these uncertain times that we're going into in the market.
So how do you cope with in the past, we've had these bailment pools, and you order a chassis, and you make an arrangement with an upfitter and a customer, and you go through the kind of a secondary manufacturing process, not very efficient. Have you seen some systems or improvements in that whole process where you can get further upstream in the ordering process and get the alignment for the production of the finished product, or are you still trying to adapt to the old system?
It's really meeting organizations where they're at with whatever that process may be. So if we're in a spreadsheet mode, let's optimize that spreadsheet mode. And then let's take the baby steps to evolve into a more automated process. And so as we look to how we get that buy-in across the supply chain, because there are so many stakeholders, it really takes that trust and that genuine approach to make things better to get this across the finish line. Everybody's done a really good job of owning their piece of the pie, whether that's your OEM, second stage manufacturer, your telematics provider, tax title license, your logistics. All of these people own their piece. Now, how do we connect them throughout the entire ecosystem to really create a better customer experience? And if we do that and have that data shared responsibly, that should also lead to more streamlined manufacturing, knowing when these vehicles are coming off lease, knowing when they're replacing those vehicles. And from a resource planning standpoint, I think this transition to a digital ecosystem should be extremely rewarding, both for the customer and for their bottom line.
The bottom line is the key. And so Dan, in that regard, you have really done a great job of sort of getting the customers to be part of the process, ordering vehicles ahead of time, anticipating their service needs, and now you're doing mobile service. Is that something that's been important to meet the needs of the customers?
Absolutely. I go back to the efficiencies. I mean, for them, we're, from a retail standpoint, we've always been more of a destination dealership. I mean, we're not you've been here and you see what's around us. Now it is evolving around us, but the mobile side has opened up so many other things for us because, I said it a minute ago, most companies, you think about the extra people that they don't have anymore. And so now they're going to pay, 2 people to bring a vehicle down to get it serviced, whereas we're coming to them. We're looking at both pickup delivery. I know that's a big thing with Ford on the retail side, but we're really working hard on that. Just the same on the commercial side. We have 5 mobile vans now, and we're trying to leverage all of those to strengthen the relationships with both current and new customers just the same.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the new entries in the manufacturing of electric vehicles. For example, yesterday we had the vice president of sales for Lion, a large bus manufacturer and EV, I think the largest EV bus manufacturer that there is. They have no dealers. All of their services is mobile. And I wonder how those two worlds come together. With the job sites or where the vehicle is taken at night, but mobile service, and the combination, and we got a comment about it, where the telematics from the connected car, in an airplane, I'm very familiar with aviation. While an airplane's flying, it's the telematics from the engines and the operation of the systems is constantly fed to a central dispatcher, and that dispatcher is monitoring every airplane. And if there's anything that needs to be fixed, the parts are ordered, and when that airplane lands, it goes into maintenance, it gets fixed, and it takes off. And the mobile service piece of that may be part of that. But do you see that happening with your clients at some point?
Absolutely. And that goes back to our fleet management division. And I think we can learn, whether it's the airline industry or, the class 8 trucks have been doing that, for a long time. They've got a dispatcher that sees, whatever may be failing, and they've arranged, 90 miles down the road for someone that has the part that they can pull in and get it fixed and keep on moving. And I think that's where, from our standpoint, that the fleet management piece, as we look at what it is that may be breaking on these trucks, I think there is some historical information, both with a predictive maintenance, but also just repairs in general, that I think we're going to learn and that will make these fleets more efficient. And maybe they can operate, we've talked about a 50 unit fleet that operates like they're a 100 unit fleet, because we're way more efficient in helping them operate their assets. And obviously then it requires less people. But I think the thing that goes in, it came up yesterday in total cost of ownership, trying to be proactive, in making sure that, whatever diesel repair, doesn't end up taking out a, diesel particulate filter or an oxidation catalyst or whatever it may be, that we can help them save money. I know that sounds really crazy, but I think that's what is part of being a good partner. So I think as we learn and as this evolves, we're right now crawling with it, but I think it's going to be a big part of the future because of less people and less, vehicles that are actually out there on the road.
Yeah. We had one question that came, and that was, do you go out? Will you be having mobile charging? Do you see that as part of the service? I guess Ryan probably could answer that too.
Yeah, there's a couple different. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
No, go, Ryan. You're way more versed on what I am, but I would absolutely see that though.
Yeah, and just looking even at the tow and recovery side, you're going to see that evolve when these vehicles run out of juice, their wheels lock up. You're seeing the fire hazards that happened after the hurricane. And you're going to have to hit those things with a little bit of juice. Now, that's a lot of weight to be pulling around on a trailer. So I think you're really going to just be hitting it with enough to get to your next stop. But looking forward facing, I got to see this power bank that's these guys are building as kind of a microgrid approach from the Shift group, which I think has got some legs to it. And then we've built these skids with ChargePoint that help kind of bridge that gap in terms of getting people up. And if you want to see the ultimate mobile charger, just look into Danner. That thing is, that's pretty wild. So I think there's going to be a blended approach to that. But the idea that you can, that I don't think mobile charging is the long-term solution. I think it provides just a stopgap to get you to where the power is.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, these different elements of mobility. Mark, a question for you. And then for everybody, but how do you see maintaining a profit model? The EV prices and margins, the manufacturers' margins are going to be more modest on EVs. They make their money on internal combustions. And so you're already seeing different pricing levels and different, margin structure. And then let's say that the typical EV is 40 or 45% less maintenance, less service revenue than an IC. So how do you see the profitability model in the future growing as we transition into this new era?
That's a very good question. Number one, I'm not sure I have, because as we speak, I mean, the answers are evolving as we speak. Number one, okay, and Ryan, you can, being a little bit more well versed on it, but number one, okay, as we enter into this, okay, one, we embrace it. Two, we're going to have accounts out there that have been ICE totally by default. And some of them are going to and should embrace and move forward to EV as a result of their usage and how it fits into their model in business daily, weekly, monthly, per our advice, if you will, and recommendations. And I'm going to bounce back for a minute. Data is going to allow all of us, as well as our customers, as well as our employees, to make better decisions more efficiently. Our biggest issue that we deal with right now, which Ryan has alluded to, is we have data on too many platforms right now. That has to be funneled, I think, more effectively, and just so that we can deal with sourcing a little bit more efficiently right now. We've got an abundance of data to draw conclusions with. The problem is we have too much data coming from too many directions right now. But again, answering your question, that's probably as well as I can define it right now, because again, it's going to be a part of our moving forward EV. I'm being as proactive as I potentially can at this point right now, and obviously advising and working with all of our accounts, making sure they're aware, making sure our employees are well versed and continue to be well versed on everything that's evolving before us. And our accounts that we currently have, as well as new ones, it will be a combination of just making sure that we advise them properly.
That's true. I mean, you keep taking care of the customer today, but there is going to be new sources of revenue, I guess. Maybe you get, Dan, do you charge more? Do you get recovery from the mobile service, or do you have, or from the telematic-driven efficiencies? Do you see other places where we can add, or software or data where we can add profit opportunities as we lose some of the existing old ones?
Yes, and you said it. I mean, I think that's one, what's amazing about dealers, we're really good at figuring out new ways to make money. And so I think with that being said, one of the stats that I heard, and I believe this is the number, that right now Ford dealers are only getting 13% of the maintenance that's out there.
13.
So when you think about that, the amount of maintenance that's available, there's obviously 87% more opportunity that's there. And so when you think about, as this evolves, it's not going to evolve overnight. So there's still going to be ICE, repairs that are going to be out there, for many years, because obviously not everybody's making, there's not going to be a 100% switch. Everything we've heard has been 30% by 2030. So we got 8 years as we figure this out. But I think the big thing is you've got, whether it's an independent, whether it's fewer dealers, that are out there. I don't know if that's going to be, become reality, but I feel like that's going to become reality, because not everybody's going to want to invest in the technology needs, that are going to be applicable taking care of these customers. So the way that I see it is that, the dealers that are willing to invest and continue moving forward, some of the others are going to get left by the wayside. And that includes some of the independent repair facilities. So I think, yeah, there may be 45% less, but I think we're going to get more of those vehicles in. And I think, you said it already. We're looking at a fleet, we're fleet management, telematics, Ryan brought up the tag title service, and, not a plug to Ford, but I'm glad to hear they're thinking out of the box with doing things like this. They've hired a lot of people from leasing companies. Leasing companies have made a lot of money with all those additional services. So I think as the dealers, as long as we're eyes wide open and ears wide open, and we're evolving, and I sound like a broken record, and I think we will find different ways to make money.
How about, Ryan, from your perspective, because you have franchise dealers, and you also, you're working your own fleet management. How do you see sources of profit growth versus those that are declining as we go forward?
For us, it came down to diversification. We really had to connect with the customer, connect with where the industry is heading, and diversify. Our banks didn't care that we lost 40% of our allocation because of a pandemic and supply chain issues. We had to fill the gap. We had to make the payment. We had to find a way to get it done. And so as we looked at that model, we believe, diversifying into going downstream into the multimodal approach, going upstream and sometimes to the Class 8 segment, looking even at some aerial technology that we're layering in as well from a drone side of things. So it's just diversifying that and then doubling down on those relationships, because that's really what I think what's interesting is, as mobility evolves, the dealer network that seems to be under attack right now on the fleet and commercial side, they've earned that loyalty. They've earned that trust. They've earned that credibility. And I think it's going to be a nice pivot to see them lean on dealers that handle this responsibly to help accelerate that transition, whether it's to a more efficient maintenance uptime program on your ICE side, or whether that's to a sustainable, more long-term sustainable form of transportation. So, but I was laughing earlier about Mark comments on the financial side of this, and it's really interesting dynamic there to get that, prove out that TCO, show that your maintenance needs are actually 70% less, prove that you can have that, those 4 nines of uptime for that customer. So I think we have a long way to go. And I think what's nice about that, as dealers modernize, as we use a lot of the tools that Catherine has put together to help accelerate that, I think that we're in good hands.
No,
but you have to eyes wide open.
Yeah, that's exactly what Dan said. So from your perspective, as you look downstream profit-wise, this is to you maybe a different model than what the retail customer will be doing. It's interesting how Ford sort of segmented their business in IC and then EV and then commercial. I just, from what we've heard just now from all of you, it sounds like the commercial business is going to take maybe a different route than what will happen with the retail business.
Yeah, I mean, just to emphasize that, Jim, I have a customer that can't live without leather seats in their new F-150, right? Well, I've got a commercial account that literally is taking kids to school that they can't live without the appropriately spec'd out rear axle ratio. There's a higher level of responsibility on the applications that are getting deployed through commercial. There's a significant amount of tribal knowledge in a very highly complex ecosystem. And I think when you change how something is powered, you change how it's repowered, you change how it's serviced, you change everything around it. And I think that's really magnifying inefficiencies in our industry and creating a lot of opportunities for us to improve and evolve, leading with EV, but really looking at those same improvements on the ICE side as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That may be the franchise you're building may complement, but not be replace the retail side of it. I mean, it's a different business model. So one of the questions that I'm curious about, I think our audience would be, is do you have any experience with the used EV market? Have you sold enough? Have you got enough in operation where you've been able to see what happens to residual values, condition of the vehicle, or the issues with the batteries? I know that when there was a shortage, there was a lot of desire for used Teslas, but their values have really gone down. But it may be those that have high time batteries. How have you seen the used EV market?
Used EV market is very uncertain right now. Even trying to paper these deals right now, residuals are ultra conservative. And if you start really digging into the battery, and when you buy a vehicle, you don't buy all the fuel for the life of that vehicle. And so you have to look at different pricing models for that battery. When you look at, the model with Tesla, you start looking at thermally managed batteries versus ones that are not. And you look at the longevity of those batteries, and you look into the warranty and seeing what that degradation occurs over time. And you're seeing that a lot of these batteries have been ultra resilient through that, and they're still performing at a high level. So I see a very interesting pivot with the used EVs as more of a golf cart model, where you're swapping packs and keeping these vehicles on the road. So I think you're going to definitely see the vehicle secondary market evolve to a lot of repowers and a lot of second life use cases of these batteries that go beyond mobility. They go to data centers. They go to the battery storage for a plant or for wind industry. So there's a lot of second life applications for these batteries that can then move down the line. So I think it's going to be a huge shift in what is remarketing of a used EV, especially on the commercial side.
Yeah, that's going to be a key part of the total cost of ownership, obviously, and the acquisition cost. So in that regard, how involved do you get in your customers' infrastructure system needs? I mean, it seems like if you buy an electric vehicle and you haven't had experience before, you need help in where you get it charged, or if you've got a fleet, how you determine where to put chargers. One of the things that Tesla did is they put these superchargers around. They bought them. That I think helped them accelerate the acceptance without a question. But what do you do with a commercial account? Do you also get involved in helping them select the infrastructure for them, or the charging system, or the battery maintenance and charging? And how does that work when you sell a client for an EV conversion?
Yeah, there's really three different approaches you take. So you've got your early adopters that are just dipping their toes in. That's usually just advice and guidance on, do you have enough space available in your breaker, in the panels? Do you have power accessible? And usually when those early adopters are looking at level 2s, level 3s, it's a pretty simple conversation. When you have these fleets that are doing 10 plus at a time, that's really when you have to step up on the infrastructure side, look at it as another revenue source, but look at it as a part of F&I. That's really how we're taking it, packaging it like an F&I product, because whatever we need to do to sell a vehicle, we're going to step up. That's why we vertically integrated over time. So if we're going to step up and move more Lightnings or move more E-Transits, we're going to have to be involved in that infrastructure discussion. And in taking it that third path, we have a significant amount of partners on the infrastructure side, building these depots and staying really close with guys like that have this turnkey solution that really helps you buy time while you grow into these larger behind the fence depots that are going up across the country.
Do you get into some of the revenue on those? I mean, are you able to make a partnership arrangement where that is also help supplement your revenue or sustainability of the cash flow?
Yeah, there's different alignments with different people. So it all depends where you meet in the process, how involved you are. But yes, there's definitely revenue opportunities on that side of things, most definitely.
Interesting. So now that we're kind of talking about this whole ecosystem and how we adapt, one of the big changes is going to be getting them financed. Mark, have you had any experience in EV financing through your traditional factory sources? Do you know how that's gone?
Well, I have not heard of any disruptions at this point, okay, on financing thus far. Granted, okay, the volume is not significant at this point, but it hasn't, and I'm referring to obviously new, if you will. We have had some involvement in the pre-owned end of it as well, with some Teslas. Haven't experienced anything and heard of anything, on our end of it with any of the lenders thus far, Jim. No.
Okay. How about Dan? How about you? Have you, with Ford Credit or with some of the other brands, have you had any experience on how the financial institutions are?
I would echo what Mark says. I mean, we haven't seen anything. I mean, we haven't, we've had a few deliveries, but we haven't had I would say enough really to even form an opinion about it.
Because Ryan said it's like F&I, the charging, but what's the F&I going to be on EVs?
You're seeing it evolve. You're seeing a couple different sources. It's early, but I had some great meetings with Ford Pro and how they wrap that infrastructure up. There's a couple different funds out there with supporting ESG initiatives to help roll up infrastructure and the EVs. They want that type of paper. So you're seeing it evolve, but it's definitely an out of the box approach. And from a dealer side, quite frankly, where we need to be focused beyond the infrastructure, or beyond that finance piece, because there are things coming, guys. There are packages coming, and I've seen it firsthand. But where we need the help is on the insurance side. So we go through all of this work, we get all the way downstream, and now you're already paying a premium for an EV, and then you get your insurance quote, and it's 3 times more, and you get your extended warranty, and it's 10 grand instead of 3 grand. These are the things that we really need to do a deeper dive in and say, what's real here, and how do we get it across the finish line?
Extended warranties because of the battery exposure?
Yeah. So if you look at some of the groups we've worked with in the past, and again, keep in mind this is converted vehicles, which creates another element of it. But these are class 3 to class 7 vehicles that the end user is getting in, and you're seeing the regulatory pressure for these smaller fleets between 50 and 100 units that are trying to make this transition. They step up and pay the premium on the vehicle, and then they go to insurance, and they triple down on that piece, and it really becomes a tough pill to swallow. And then when they want that extended warranty to cover the bumper to bumper all the way through the life battery, it's 3 times more than your standard extended warranty on an ICE vehicle. So we really need to be mindful as we dig down further into the process of where these sticking points are going to be, so we can ensure that we get this stuff across the finish line.
Yeah, I guess you mentioned the pictures from the hurricane and the Teslas sort of starting on fire. I guess that may be part of the insurance, but over time, I suspect that's going to be hopefully, somewhat moderated. They'll fix that problem. So another element is the government regulations and incentives. The incentive process is very complicated, especially with this new IRA program. Do you have to explain to customers what kind of tax credits, or how do you work through the education when you sell the vehicles that include how they can recover from programs that they're entitled to, or is that clear? Is there a way that's part of this whole infrastructure process? Ryan, do you have a handle on that at all?
It really comes down really market by market, product by product, and understanding that customer completely. So as an example, the $7,500 tax credit, working with large FMCs, I think they're scooping the tax credit, right? But when you peel back the layers, you're only allowed to claim $300,000 of that tax credit a year for those LLCs. And so then that spreads that out. There's a lot of questions about that. So then you dig into, now you have to work on people's income statement to say, do you make a certain dollar amount? Do you live in a certain area? And are you going to operate within that disadvantaged community 90% of the time? It's a highly involved process, which is why you really need to collaborate with the CalStarts of the world, the NTEAs of the world, the SERIs of the world to help guide you through it's a very difficult to navigate that world. There's no right answer there. There's no button you can click. It's a highly involved process.
So that's going to be part of this. Is a good way to show the level of involvement as this. One of the comments from the audience is it takes a village approach. But I mean, you're going to have to. You can't just be selling commercial vehicles or fixing diesel engines, but you got to start all the way with the government regulations and tax, the infrastructure, how they're used, ordering, how the OEM. I mean, this is a business in itself that doesn't exist today. And
correct. And you look at what Dan said, where he said we have 8 years to prepare. Well, he's right, but he also needs to say we have to start now. Even that 30% by 2030 is a huge move, and so you have to start now. If anybody gets a takeaway from this, start today. Listen to Dan. The service model is critical. Owning the relationship, owning the people, like Mark said. That's really where you got to keep your head at and start today.
Right, and we began when we talked with Mark. There's not a lot of interest today. When it comes, it's too late.
Correct.
And if you wait for it to come, you won't be able to understand how to prepare for it because you got to learn it yourself, and you got to get into it. So it's been a great dialogue. I really appreciate this. It caps off the movement of what we do from what the OEMs are doing and the rest of the group that's making decisions that's affecting us And then at the retail level and at our level, at the dealerships, it all falls on us. And if we can't figure out how to take care of customers, how to change our organizations, how to adapt, and how to create revenue opportunities for both you and your customers, then it's probably not the business for you. And if you can figure it out, it would have been easier to keep shoeing horses, except there were fewer horses and fewer needs for shoes. So now's the time for us to figure out this new era. I want to thank you all very much for your involvement and the comments from the audience.